When I watched Clarence, there was this episode called Rise and Shine that always really caught my attention. This ep was one of my favorites, and every time I watched it, it gave me a really good feeling. I definitely had no idea where that feeling came from, since it was an episode that apparently wasn't anything special. It didn't try to teach you any big lesson. It was just there to show everything that happens before we wake up through the eyes of a very optimistic child. But when I rewatched this episode, I have to say it hit me in a completely different way than it did when I was a kid. I realized that the good feeling I had was still positive, but it definitely wasn't the same anymore after growing up. But today, I feel like I'm a little more capable of understanding it, and I'm going to try to express that to you here. If you don't want to miss all the good things, you have to wake up before the sun, because the sun is lazy. Remember that sentence, because I'll talk more about it at the end of the video. Most people in Aberdale were still sleeping because it was really early, but if there was someone totally awake, it was Clarence, who was literally staring at his alarm clock waiting for it to hit 5 a.m. And when it finally did, he jumped out of bed with the greatest joy in the world, excited for a brand new day. And it's interesting to think that while this is a gift for some people, for others it's suffering. There are moments in life when the last thing we want is a new day, when the night that kept us away from the world and felt like it could last forever might just fix things. So we stay up late, putting off the next day as much as we can because of that tight feeling in our chest when we think about waking up again. But what if it were possible to wake up with the joy and energy of a child again? What if we could see things with a different perspective? What if we could find that spark in our heart that got lost a long time ago somewhere along this daily routine? Even though Clarence does pretty much the same things every morning, he still goes through his morning activities as if they were brand new and unique in experiences he'd never had before, as if everything was a delightful novelty that would never happen again. He looks really happy while doing those things and enjoys them to the fullest, having a great time. It was all simple stuff, but at the same time, it meant a lot to him. After that, he goes outside before the sun even rises, so he won't miss all the good things that happen during the time most people are still asleep. He brings food to some raccoons and then meets a woman who works collecting garbage. She didn't seem nearly as happy, cheerful, or optimistic about the morning as he was. They talk a bit, and Clarence, always very innocent and optimistic, asks her if she found any good trash that morning, but she replies that if it were something good, it wouldn't be trash. Some time passes, and then Clarence notices that his friend Randy is out delivering newspapers again, just like he does every morning. He also notices that Randy is extremely tired and worn out after walking so much delivering papers. Clarence offers him a granola bar and helps him deliver some of the newspapers in a very cheerful way, as if it were the coolest thing in the world. At that moment, some police cars drive by, and Clarence, very curious, as always, goes over to ask the officer who they were chasing. The animal control guy then says there was a mountain lion on the loose in that neighborhood, and that Clarence needed to go home immediately because it was a very dangerous animal. But when Clarence gets back to his house, he ends up finding the mountain lion right there in the backyard, and obviously runs off to alert the authorities. Everyone gathers to watch the animal being captured, and after a few tense moments, so to speak, everything turns out just fine in the end. Finally, the sun shines in the sky, the shops begin to open their doors, people head out to work, go for walks, and start their days once again, some more motivated than others. At that moment, the clock showed 7 a.m., and Clarence lays down in bed exhausted, asking his mom for 5 more minutes when she calls him. But as soon as she says she made his favorite breakfast, he gets up excited all over again. And honestly, I think the beauty of this episode is in seeing the world through different eyes, waking up early and seeing a new day with a different perspective, with a view that's a little more pure, warm, and human, a child's perspective. So many things happen while we're sleeping, it almost feels like a lie. And believe me when I say people spend a big part of their lives sleeping, even when they're awake. Along the way, we end up losing many important things that could keep us from falling apart if only we looked at them with a bit more gratitude. The beauty was always there, but we go through these things day after day, week after week, year after year, and eventually they start to go unnoticed because they feel eternal. It feels like all of that will last forever. And if it'll always be there, if it'll always be the same, then what's the point? But let me tell you, one day it all ends. One day things change, or we change. One day people turn into photos on shelves. One day moments become rarer. One day time gets shorter. One day the places that once meant everything become clutter. One day all that's left are scattered, blurry memories. But if everything in life passes, you can be sure that suffering will pass too. I know it's really hard to wake up to life when everyone around you just wants to stay in bed. I know how much more comfortable and easier it is to close your eyes to problems. But it's definitely not worth the future regret of a whole life spent asleep. We need to rise before the sun comes up. We need to go through hard times, through discomfort, through fear, through anxiety, through pain. All of it seems impossible to bear at first. It doesn't make sense. So some people tell themselves they're just not the type who can wake up early. Others think they're not the type who can live. But let me tell you, with each morning, we resist a little better. We get used to it a little more. Every day it gets a little easier. And then we learn and we overcome. Try to find whatever it was that used to live in your heart when you were still a child and wake up to life.